The rain fell hard that night, sheets of water hammering the streets and turning every alley into a blur of shadows. Daniel tightened the zipper of his worn jacket and kept his head down, the sound of his boots splashing against puddles echoing faintly. It was nearly midnight. He was exhausted from another double shift at the auto shop, the kind of work that broke his back but barely covered the bills. His daughter Emily would be waiting for him at home, probably asleep with her favorite storybook still open by her pillow. Just the thought of her small smile kept him moving forward. As he turned down a narrow street, something pulled his attention, a muffled cry, sharp against the storm. He stopped. At first, he thought it was just the wind playing tricks on him. But then he heard it again, a desperate sound of struggle, followed by the unmistakable thud of a body hitting concrete. His heart skipped. Against his better judgment, Daniel moved closer, his instincts kicking in. Through the hazy streetlight ahead, he saw two figures hunched over a woman. She was fighting, her arms flailing weakly, but the men were ruthless, pinning her down. For a split second, Daniel froze. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't trained for this. He was just a single dad trying to survive. But then, like a flash, Emily's face came to his mind. What if that were her years from now? What if she needed someone, and everyone walked away? The thought alone lit a fire in him. "Hey!" he shouted, charging forward without a plan, only a pounding in his chest. The attackers whipped their heads around, startled. One of them cursed and swung a fist at Daniel. He ducked, feeling the whoosh of air graze his ear, then slammed his shoulder into the man's chest with every ounce of strength he had. The second attacker lunged, but Daniel kicked out, sending the man sprawling into the wet pavement. His adrenaline was a roaring tide. Pain didn't register, only survival. The woman managed to break free, but only for a moment before her knees buckled. Daniel fought like a man possessed, blocking, shoving, clawing to keep them off her. At last, the attackers retreated, spitting threats as they melted into the darkness. The sound of their footsteps faded, swallowed by the storm. Daniel's chest heaved. He turned, and the woman collapsed into his arms. Her face was pale, eyes fluttering. Blood seeped through the fabric of her jacket, staining his hands as he tried to steady her. Something metallic clinked to the ground, a badge. Daniel's breath caught. She wasn't just any woman. She was a police officer. "Stay with me," he muttered, his voice raw. "You're gonna be fine." But she didn't answer. He could feel how weak she was, slipping fast. Without another thought, he scooped her up, cradling her against his chest as the rain poured down harder. Daniel's mind raced as he searched for somewhere safe. He couldn't take her to his apartment, not with Emily there. The nearest hospital was miles away, and he feared she wouldn't last that long. Then he saw the faded neon sign of an old diner, long closed, its door hanging loosely. Kicking it open, he carried her inside, laying her gently in a booth. His hands trembled as he tore off his own shirt and pressed it against her wound. Her lips parted, and for the first time, she whispered, "Don't call anyone." Daniel blinked, stunned. "What? You're bleeding out. I need to get you help." "No," she rasped, her voice cracking. "If you call, it'll bring them." Her eyes locked onto his with a ferocity that froze him. "They won't stop until I'm dead." Daniel stared at her, confused, fear twisting in his gut. "Who are they?" The officer shook her head faintly, coughing. "Not now. Just listen. Please. You're not safe if they know you're with me." He pressed the cloth harder to slow the bleeding, frustration building. "Safe? Lady, I just dragged you out of an alley. I'm already not safe." Her hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength, forcing him to pause. "You could still walk away. Pretend you never saw me. Save your daughter from what's coming." The words hit him like a blow. His chest tightened. How did she know about Emily? He hadn't said a word. But as he looked at her, shivering and broken, the thought of leaving her behind felt impossible. Every instinct screamed at him to get out, to run before he dragged Emily into danger. But another voice, louder and deeper, reminded him of why he had stepped in the first place. He couldn't abandon her now. He met her eyes, his jaw set. "I'm not leaving you." Her expression softened, just slightly, and for a moment, the storm outside seemed to quiet. She released his wrist and let her head rest back against the seat, whispering almost to herself, "You don't even know what you've just done." Daniel didn't answer. He kept pressure on her wound, his mind already turning over the impossible situation he had stepped into. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this night wasn't just about saving a stranger. It was the beginning of something much bigger, something that could shatter the fragile life he had built for Emily. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty: walking away was no longer an option. The night dragged on inside the abandoned diner, the storm outside pounding against the broken windows as though warning them both. Daniel kept pressing his shirt to the officer's wound, his arm aching, but he didn't dare stop. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. He leaned closer. "Hey, stay with me. You said your name was..." Her eyes flickered open, glassy with pain. "Claire," she whispered. Daniel nodded, repeating it like an anchor. "Okay, Claire, I'm Daniel. I'm not letting you die here." She gave a faint, humorless laugh that turned into a cough. "You're stubborn. You don't even know what you're risking." He wanted to demand answers, but her strength was fading. Still, she managed to push out words between ragged breaths. "Those men, they're not random thugs. They're cops. My own partners. Her voice broke, her face twisting with shame. "I found out what they're doing. Drugs, money, trafficking. They'll kill anyone who threatens it. Even me." Daniel's heart lurched. "Cops. Dirty ones." He stared at her in disbelief. For years, he had told Emily that the police were the good guys, the ones you could trust. Now he was kneeling in a puddle of blood from a cop who was hunted by her own. "You could have walked away," Claire murmured. "You still can." Daniel's mind screamed for him to listen. To get out while he could. To go home, lock the doors, hug Emily, and pretend none of this ever happened. But he couldn't. Not after seeing the terror in Claire's eyes. Not after watching two men try to beat the life out of her. "Yeah, well," he muttered, pressing harder against her wound, "walking away isn't really my thing." Her gaze softened, just for a second, before exhaustion pulled her under. Daniel sat in the silence, the only sound the rain and the thudding of his own pulse. He thought of Emily, her tiny hands clutching his when she was scared. He thought of all the times he had sworn to protect her from the darkness of the world. And now that same darkness was spilling into their lives, uninvited. Hours later, when the rain eased and the first hint of dawn crept into the sky, Daniel knew he couldn't keep her there. She needed more than his clumsy first aid. But where? The hospital was risky. The cops she spoke of might be waiting. His mind spun until one thought anchored him: home. Emily was everything, his entire world. The idea of bringing this danger near her felt insane. But another part of him whispered that he couldn't just let Claire die. And if she was telling the truth, keeping her alive might be the only way to protect Emily in the long run. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, Daniel had made his choice. He carried Claire out of the diner, her weight heavy in his arms but his steps steady with resolve. The door to his small apartment creaked open quietly. Emily was still asleep in her room, her hair a messy halo around her face. Daniel laid Claire carefully on the couch, covering her with a blanket. Her face was pale but calmer now. A soft voice broke the quiet. "Daddy." Emily rubbed her eyes, stepping into the living room in her pajamas. She froze when she saw Claire, confusion written all over her little face. Daniel forced a smile. "It's okay, sweetheart. This is Claire. She's a friend who got hurt. We're helping her." Emily's gaze flicked between him and the stranger. Without a word, she padded over, dragging her favorite blanket, a faded one with cartoon stars, and draped it gently over Claire. "She looks cold," she whispered. Claire stirred, her eyes opening just enough to see the small girl standing beside her. For the first time since the alley, her expression softened into something fragile, almost grateful. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice breaking. Daniel swallowed hard, watching his daughter's kindness reach the woman who hours ago was certain she'd die alone in the rain. Something shifted in the air, quiet but undeniable. When Emily went back to her room, Daniel sat near Claire. She turned her head slightly toward him. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she whispered. "If they find me, they'll come after you." "After her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then I'll make sure they don't." She looked at him with something between disbelief and wonder. Why? He thought of Emily's blanket, of her innocent gesture. He thought of the promise he made to himself when she was born. that he'd raise her to believe in goodness, even in a world that often failed to show it. Because she deserves to see people stand up for what's right, he said quietly. Even if it's dangerous. For a moment, Claire simply stared at him, as though searching for something in his eyes. Then she let out a shaky breath and closed her eyes, whispering, "You're either the bravest man I've met, or the most foolish." Daniel sat back, exhaustion hitting him, but his resolve hardening like steel. He didn't know what the next hours would bring, or what kind of storm was heading toward him and Emily. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had chosen to protect her, this broken, hunted officer, and in doing so, he might have just thrown open the door to a fight much larger than himself. Yet, deep in his gut, he also knew he wouldn't regret it. Not now, not ever. Night had fallen again by the time Daniel realized the walls of his small apartment could no longer keep the storm out. Claire was stronger now, her color returning, but her eyes never stopped darting toward the window, as though shadows might reach in and drag her away. Daniel tried to keep things normal for Emily, making her dinner, reading her a story, but even his daughter noticed the heaviness in the air. "Daddy," she whispered as he tucked her in, "why are you so worried?" He kissed her forehead and forced a smile. "Because sometimes bad people try to scare the good ones. But we don't let them win, do we?" She shook her head, her little fists tightening around the blanket. In the living room, Claire sat upright, clutching her side. "Daniel," she said quietly, "they'll come. They don't leave loose ends. You and your daughter." "Enough," he cut in, his voice sharp but steady. "I know what I signed up for the moment I stepped into that alley. I'm not backing down now." Her eyes softened, but before she could answer, a sound outside froze them both, the crunch of boots on gravel, too deliberate to be random. Daniel moved to the window and caught the glint of headlights shutting off in the distance. "They found us," Claire whispered. Daniel's heart slammed in his chest. His mind raced. Emily was asleep, unaware that danger was closing in. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept near the door and turned to Claire. "Can you move?" She nodded weakly, pulling herself up. "I can fight." Moments later, the front door rattled under a heavy knock. A voice called out, cold and mocking. "Open up, Daniels. We just want what belongs to us." Daniel tightened his grip on the bat. Claire's jaw clenched. She whispered, "They'll kill you if you let them in. They don't care about witnesses." The door splintered under the first kick. Daniel motioned for Claire to stay low, then swung the bat as the door burst open. The first attacker stumbled inside, only to meet a crushing blow across the ribs. He collapsed, cursing. The second barged in with a gun, but Claire, summoning every ounce of her training, launched herself forward, slamming his arm against the wall until the weapon clattered to the floor. The apartment erupted into chaos, shouts, crashes, fists flying. Daniel fought with the raw strength of a father protecting his child, every swing fueled by the thought of Emily sleeping in the next room. Claire moved with precision, though her injury slowed her. Together, they were barely enough to hold the attackers off. Then, in the middle of the struggle, Claire shouted, "My phone, pocket. The recording app, it's running." Daniel's eyes widened. She had been recording everything, their threats, their confessions. This wasn't just survival, it was evidence. The attackers realized too late. One lunged for her pocket, but Daniel hurled himself into him, the bat slamming down with bone-shaking force. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Claire had triggered an emergency beacon when the fight began. The dirty cops panicked. One tried to flee, only to be tackled by arriving officers who stormed the building. Within moments, the living room was flooded with uniforms, the attackers pinned and handcuffed, their furious shouts drowned out by the crackle of police radios. Daniel dropped the bat, his chest heaving. Claire leaned against the wall, breathing hard, clutching the phone that now held the truth. She met his eyes, and for the first time since the alley, she allowed herself to smile. Hours later, when the chaos had died down and the corrupt officers were hauled away, Claire sat across from Daniel in the quiet apartment. Emily had slept through most of it, only stirring when the flashing lights outside faded. "You saved me," Claire said softly. "But more than that, you gave me something I lost a long time ago." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" Her gaze drifted toward Emily's bedroom door. "Faith. I thought the world was too broken to fix. That people only looked out for themselves. But then you, a stranger with nothing but a bat and a heart too big for your own good, you proved me wrong. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable under the weight of her words. I didn't do it for Faith. I did it for her. For Emily. She deserves a world where people fight back, even when it's hard. Claire's eyes glistened. Then maybe you saved more than me. Maybe you saved the part of me that still believes in what I'm supposed to stand for. The days that followed changed everything. Claire testified, her recordings exposing a network of corruption deeper than anyone imagined. Headlines splashed across the city, calling her brave. But she knew the truth. It wasn't bravery that had carried her through. It was a single father who refused to walk away. One evening, weeks later, Claire knocked on Daniel's door again, this time without blood on her uniform or fear in her eyes. Emily opened it, grinning. You came back. Claire knelt down, meeting the little girl's bright gaze. I told you I owed your dad my life. And maybe I owe you something too. She pulled out a small badge, not her own, but a toy replica she had picked up. She pinned it gently on Emily's shirt. Because of you, I remembered what this badge is supposed to mean. Emily's eyes lit up, and Daniel stood behind her, watching with quiet pride. As the three of them sat down for dinner that night, laughter filling the small apartment, Daniel realized something. What had begun as a terrifying accident in the rain had turned into something far greater. He hadn't just protected a cop, he had helped uncover the truth, and in the process, found someone who might just become part of the family he and Emily had always longed for. And as Claire raised her glass of water in a quiet toast, she said the words that would echo in Daniel's heart forever. You didn't just save me. You changed everything.